Today, we're embarking on a mini-series aimed at uncovering one of the most perplexing areas of emotional growth: how to identify what really sets us off when life throws curveballs. Think of this as your blueprint for navigating the turbulent waters of emotional triggers. You might not realize it, but our physical and emotional states are intimately linked. The more tense we feel inside, the more that tension will manifest physically: stiff shoulders, a clenched jaw, an uneasy gut. And here's the kicker: we often go about our days unaware of this tension until, bam, something small happens, and suddenly we're spiraling. Today, we're going to look deeper at what really causes those reactions. To break this down, let's walk through an example. Imagine a man named Henry. He's just arrived at the office, and his boss stops by his desk to go over a few mistakes he made on a recent project. His boss's tone is measured, not scolding, just offering constructive feedback. But for Henry, each word feels like a hammer, striking his self-esteem. He brushes it off outwardly, but inside, the story is different. "I can't believe I missed that. I'm so careless. I'm such an idiot." All day, Henry's trapped in a mental loop of self-criticism, berating himself for mistakes that, rationally speaking, are quite minor. Later, as he's leaving work, still brooding, a stranger accidentally bumps into him, causing Henry to drop his briefcase. The stranger mutters a quick apology, but it's too late. Henry explodes. He yells, calling the stranger stupid and incompetent, mirroring the exact insults he's been hurling at himself since his morning meeting. But what really happened here? What caused Henry to react so violently? Most would say it was the stranger who bumped into him, right? After all, that's when he snapped. But if we look closer, the true trigger wasn't the stranger at all. Henry's outburst was the culmination of hours spent festering in shame and self-doubt, all sparked by that brief meeting with his boss. In that split second on the street, Henry wasn't yelling at the stranger, he was yelling at himself. So, what's the lesson? The situation that sets us off is rarely the true issue. Emotional outbursts, like Henry's, are often the result of a deeper, hidden source, usually a pain point that's been simmering long before the surface-level trigger appears. This underlying issue might be fear, shame, or insecurity. And most importantly, it's usually an unresolved emotion that we haven't fully processed or even acknowledged. The reality is that when we react strongly to something seemingly minor, it's usually because that situation is echoing a much deeper emotion we're struggling to confront. When we don't take the time to identify these core emotions, we end up lashing out at the wrong target. Like a pressure cooker with no release valve, the steam builds and builds until a seemingly small thing causes it to blow. So, what do? We start by adopting a mindset of non-judgmental observation. Instead of berating ourselves for losing control or reacting badly, we need to take a step back and ask, what's really going on here? This isn't easy. We're wired to defend ourselves when we feel vulnerable. Our minds want to justify our reactions by blaming the external catalyst, like Henry blaming the stranger instead of facing his own feelings of inadequacy. But if we want to grow, we must train ourselves to look inward. Here's what you can do. 1. Pause and reflect. The next time you find yourself reacting strongly, pause. Before justifying your response or blaming the external trigger, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Work backwards. After identifying the immediate emotion, trace it back. When did you first start feeling this way today? Was there a specific moment? If you dig, you might find that the true source lies further back, perhaps a comment someone made, an email you read, or even just a nagging thought from the morning. Suspend judgment. Whatever you uncover, don't judge it. Acknowledge it. You're not weak or irrational for feeling upset. You're simply uncovering the raw material of your emotional landscape. Today, we want to challenge you to do some reflective journaling. Think back to a recent moment when you overreacted. Maybe it was snapping at a coworker or yelling at a loved one. What happened in that moment? What were you truly feeling before the reaction? Work your way backwards to see if you can identify the core emotion beneath the surface. Did someone's comment make you feel insecure? Did a minor inconvenience trigger a deeper frustration that's been building for weeks? Write it down, without judgment, and see if you can trace the emotion to its root. The goal here isn't to fix it, just to understand it. The path to emotional mastery begins with awareness. Each time you identify a core emotion, you're taking another step toward freeing yourself from reactionary behavior. You're growing stronger, becoming more resilient, and creating space for a life lived with intention rather than reaction. Keep looking inward. That's where the real breakthroughs happen.